Obama was elected president, and everybody, seems like the anti-war movement just started to diminish, and I felt a little lost. And yeah, I started looking for other things to make impacts, and I created an organization called Veterans Green Jobs, where we were taking military veterans, giving them training in green job areas, whether it was weatherization, solar, wind technology, even land conservation, wilderness firefighting. And our goal was to put veterans through training, and then be a job service connecting them to actual career jobs. And at the time, we thought there was going to be a big boom in the green economy, and President Obama was going to lead the way in some sort of green transition. And instead, we argued about healthcare for years and went into debt, and it never really emerged. And I worked my way back into the anti-war movement, and really, this is my home. I'm an anti-war veteran. I'm a veteran for peace, and it's pretty amazing that I get to be the executive director of Veterans for Peace. So VFP, we have a statement of purpose that's our guiding light, and keeps us focused on what our mission is at VFP. And we have a lot of facets. The organization does a lot of different things. There's a lot of autonomous pockets, over 130 chapters, over 9 national projects that have their own autonomy and infrastructure, and many working groups and campaigns. But they all spawn from this one mission statement, where we actually have 2 new pieces to the mission statement this year. There was a voted on last election in November. Veterans for Peace is a very democratic organization, and we vote on bylaws and on board of directors from our membership. But our new pieces of this is number 3, to resist racism and repression in our home communities. Number 4, to oppose the militarization of law enforcement. So we're seeing that a lot of these issues are interconnected, and there's a lot of interconnectivity on a lot of these issues, and war and climate is just one example of those. So we're making that connection. Here's Dwight D. Eisenhower, who gave a really incredible speech exiting the White House, warning us about the military-industrial complex. And I believe all of our heroes, Greta Thunberg, who's just an amazing activist. So U.S. military, most of this slideshow really delves into the carbon emission greenhouse gases of the U.S. military. It's once you start peeling apart the facts, and you see the tremendous waste that we're using just in carbon emissions in the U.S. military, it's really tragic. I think if more climate activists knew and understood what is going on in the U.S. military and how it's impacting climate crisis, everybody in the green movement would also be anti-war. We're not gonna get to a safe future without ending militarism on this planet, especially U.S. militarism, which is the number 1 threat. So we have the world's largest aircraft fleets. One of the largest carbon emitters is aircraft. The amount of fuel used just by one jet fighter or the beast that you saw on the other slide is devastating. Yeah, the U.S. military, just the military alone emits more CO2 than many nations singularly. Combined total output of entire nations, and that's the U.S. military. We've all probably have gone to these protests around the naval flights or the air flights. Seems like every sporting game, every big parade has some jet fighters flying, and it's basically to sell war back to the public. but it is literally killing us too. These jets that are flying over are just consuming massive amounts of fuel, emitting lots of CO2. So the sources, I mean, the military, whether we're at war or not, we're doing war games, we're doing exercises, we're doing competitions or displays. All these things are just burning CO2 up. Here's some examples: U.S. and British warships and global exercise near the Philippines, and Arctic littoral strike wargaming, which is littoral's kind of like an interface between water and land, if you will. It really is the real. I shouldn't get into it now, but check out the littoral strike exercises and teams that they're building in the Marine Corps. It's pretty frightening. All of our bases, we have extensive amount of military bases all over the world. All of them have an intense carbon footprint. I think if we did the research on just one of these bases, it'd just be devastating how much CO2 is just coming off these bases alone. All of our equipment uses so much fuel, and now we're pushing out into space. The space missions, whether it's the computer services that are integrated with Space Force, or whether it's the rockets themselves, it's using a tremendous amount of energy, tremendous amount of fossil fuels to do it. Hopefully my voice sticks around. So yeah, there's no such thing as a green war. Even if we made a military force that was net zero carbon, war is toxic. We're leaving toxic pollution, burn pits, depleted uranium. We're destroying infrastructure that is critical to handling carbon emissions and carbon output. I served in Iraq, and we laid waste to cities' infrastructure. The whole country was without waste management systems, healthy drinking water, electrical units, so many small generators being used to provide electricity, which are horrible for carbon emissions. Small engines are really bad. So there's no such thing as a green war. It's a myth. There's no such thing as a green military. We're trying every day to greenwash our U.S. military with biodiesel fleets and solar panels on soldiers' backpacks, things like that. That's not to get to a carbon zero. That's to become more self-efficient and independent, to be able to operate without the logistical constraints. So we have freedom of maneuver for our military. So don't get fooled about any greenwashing tactics that you might hear come from the U.S. military. Where's our budget going? It's increasing. We've now, we're out of the Iraq war, we're out of the Afghanistan war. We've basically are seeing that the threat of conventional Russian military minus the nuclear weapons is not the boogeyman that everybody's trying to make them out to be. But our budget is increasing. It seems to be projected to only go up. And that is a problem. That is a lot of resources. Compared to the U.S. military to the next 10, I believe now, nations. And we have a larger military budget than the next 10 largest nations. It's a lot of our money. And I did mention nuclear weapons. The doomsday clock is, fractions away from striking midnight. We've never been at such a heightened risk for nuclear war since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's imminent. I can't get away without talking about Ukraine a bit. The military industrial complexes and individual politicians do not see the Ukraine crisis as a crisis. It is viewed largely as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make money, and it's an opportunity to position themselves to be reelected. And reelections, campaigns obviously are intertwined with the campaign donations of military industrial complexes. So who pays the price? Our climate and all of us, the people pay the price. The environmental damage that's just surrounding the conflict in Ukraine will be enormous. So a new arms race, I don't think we could do it. I don't think we could avoid the projections. We're supposed to cut fossil fuels by half in 5 years, says the recent UN report. With this current conflict now, I think we're going to fail unless we do something radical and we end this conflict immediately. Any sort of lengthening of this war only makes it more and more difficult to meet our climate goals that we have set. Veterans for Peace, we have some really useful slides if you want to use them surrounding the no-fly zone. Check out our website at veteransforpeace.org, and they're pretty easy to find. But it was striking to us that 74% of the United States supported a no-fly zone, which meant basically declaration of war, because you can't have a no-fly zone without U.S. personnel shooting down Russian military. And if any previous education around no-fly zones helps, every single no-fly zone in the past has also included preemptive strikes, which means striking missile platforms and aircraft fields inside the border of Russia. So no-fly zones are an act of war. How do we end the conflict in Ukraine? We need to support Ukraine in peace negotiations. We need to put everything that we have as the United States on the table. I think it's another form of colonizing to enforce what happens to that country and whether they should and should not fight to defend their nation. But we can still control how we impact that. And right now, we're holding things tight to our chest as the United States, including sanctions, respecting neutrality, rebuilding efforts, NATO expansion. It's almost as if we don't even want the conflict in Ukraine to end, and that's tragic. So people speak from one side of their mouth saying they want to help Ukrainians and it's our duty, and from the other side of the mouth they inhibit any sort of quick end to the actual struggle. But end weapon transfers, I heard this term for the first time last month, lethal aid. What a horrible term that is, lethal aid. We provide lethal aid to Ukraine. Oppose no-fly zones, no direct escalations, demand more congressional hearings. Congress pretty much only works now Tuesday to Thursday. Monday's a travel day to DC and Friday's a travel day home. So if you see the trajectory of congressional hearings in the last 15 years, they've gone drastically down. So they're not having the debates that they normally have in the halls of Congress. Demand Congress takes back constitutional authority to declare war. Obviously, Congress can declare war. We've seen it happen. But at least it's not the decision of one individual to go escalate into a conflict. And it's supposed to be a constitutional power that Congress has that they shirked on, and they don't want to be holding the bag on difficult decisions that might come back and bite them. So they allow the president to make these decisions on their own. And now we basically slide into some sort of executive power dictatorship. So we want Congress to take back the authorization to declare war, demand a decrease to the military budget. I'll get into some more of that in a second. And demand an end to military industry campaign to contributions, which I think, the tie-in between our elections and the military industry is tragic. So we can't afford a protracted war in Ukraine. This needs to end. Not only is it distracting all of our attention. It's distracting all of our resources as well. So here's some of the money that's going to Ukraine. Guess who gets the invoice? You know, these are all coming to the production factories of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. They're expensive pieces of hardware we're sending over, and the taxpayer buys it and we send it over there. And these corporate execs make all the money. It's a matter of priorities. Martin Luther King. It's a spiritual death. That's what we're doing. I wanted to leave in these cartoon slides. I think they make a pretty strong point. So what are we doing? You know, who gets this money, and what can't we afford? You know, the tragic thing is that, yeah, there's these emissions from the US military, but also the monopolization of our resources that could go to education, healthcare, you know, defeating the health crisis that we have, green transition, you know, everything we have that the money could be going towards is, I think, the true crime. Military contractors get rich. It's war profiteering. You know, I went to Iraq and I fought in Iraq. I got exploited and I got used by this nation. And now, as a citizen, I'm getting used again. You know, all my tax money is going to war. Rising emissions. You know, there's just no excuse for this. You know, it really is heartbreaking. The IPCC gave dire warning. Global greenhouse emissions, which contribute to the rise, must peak by 2025 if we hope to have a realistic chance of avoiding plus 1.5 C. You know, it's just you know, it's like the warning lights are flashing right now, and you really would expect to walk around the city and see people running around screaming and you know, moving with haste because the actual crisis that we're immediately in. I mean, it's like we're about to have impact, and we're completely distracted. You know, we live in this rut. We designed systems to force us to avoid the real threat and to feel powerless to be able to do anything about it. But we're not going to survive. Yeah, I mentioned I went to war. I went to war for oil, right? Here's 3 quotes I found. Of course, it's about oil. We can't really deny that, said General John Abazid, former head of U.S. Central Command and military operations in Iraq in 2007. Defense Secretary Chuck Schumer at the time, 2007. People say we're not fighting for oil. Of course we are. Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, writing his memoir, I'm saddened that it is so politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows. The Iraq war is largely about oil. I mean, like these aren't conspiracy theorists, you know. These are people that usually are, you know, on the other side of things that we're fighting, and they're telling us very directly and bluntly, we fight wars for oil. So who benefits? Not the average people, you know. Who benefits from war? You know, Putin's of the world, Biden's of the world, the corporate execs of the world, the oligarchs of the world. The usual working class people and poor are the ones that suffer, and we're either dying on the barbed wire or we're facing the price because of the climate destruction that is impending. Other military impacts. I want to throw this slide in here. You know, this is a picture of the U.S. Marines simulating a riot in Africa, helping the African troops train. What do you think they're gonna, you know, they're suppressing here? So the U.S. military destruction of assets. You know, if you study capitalism, you know that you need to destroy assets to open up markets. We pretty much have tapped into every market on planet Earth. So you need to destroy assets to open opportunities for capitalism to flow. Invasion, occupation supports extractive colonialism, Iraq. We protect and support fossil fuel transportation all around the earth. We suppress local resistance against polluting and extracting corporations. Look at the presence in Standing Rock of the US military and reinforcing private contractors. They do that as well through the School of Americas, training people to suppress, training countries and corporations to suppress indigenous resistance of extractive colonialism. And US militarism absorbs all our resources. So we can't have any sort of climate solutions, green transition, or adaptive practices that develop. Yeah, I thought this was an amazing slide. Janet, if there's any other CCMP folks, just to highlight the fact that we're spending this intense amount of money stopping climate refugees. You know, it's not only are we creating the problem, we're also diverting our resources to prevent climate refugees from crossing over the border. It's heartbreaking. Really, really evil. Economic costs of militarism. I know I'm probably running over. I want to get to some questions and answers, so I'm going to go over some of these slides. Everybody talks about jobs. If we invested the same resources in any sort of sector, job sector, you know, it's going to come back in dividends, but we're basically spending all these resources in jobs that are wasted. It creates destruction and war that does not come back into an investment towards the American people. Just elementary and secondary school education, man. You imagine if we put all that money towards teachers, what kind of society, future society we would have, instead of spending it in war. Sorry, I got a loud family here. I think we're all sick, so apologize. Yeah, some of the things that the Climate Crisis and Militarism Project is doing. House Resolution 767 on military emissions. We need to know exactly what emissions we're putting out. It needs to be tracked and it needs to be public. You can find all this information on our website. So check out veteransforpeace.org. Look in our national projects and under Take Action. Those are both good ways. Usually in the slider right on the front page, there's a way directly into the Climate Crisis military project. We'll do the slideshow if anybody else wants to have this slideshow done, probably by somebody who's more polished than I am. Our project would love to do additional slideshows for y'all, and we do have bumper stickers. So come grab a bumper sticker. We'd love to collaborate with more climate groups. I think it's critical that we get this information into other enviro organizations and climate activisms. We want to meet with congressional representatives. So if y'all are able to make a local meeting, you want to include us in it to talk about some of this stuff, we'd love to do it. And media outreach, we need to get the word out. Here's just a highlight of what you'll see on the webpage and an example of the resources that are available. Here's these cool bumper stickers. You got to call Barry for these, right, Janet? I think we could get you in touch with somebody if you want the bumper stickers. And you can print off these pamphlets. We have the pamphlets available on the website. We have actually a couple of new pieces as well that you could print off and use locally if you want. Tomorrow, there's a really big event on actual Earth Day. So please check out this event tomorrow if you don't already have plans in the evening. I know a lot of you are probably going to be in the streets during the day, but if you want a bigger dose of the interconnections of militarism and the climate crisis, this is an incredible webinar that'll be there. And yeah, I appreciate the chance to be here, and I'll take any questions. think Jeffrey's had his hand up. Do you wanna go ahead and facilitate this?
Yes, so, our president, Paul Moriarty, is going to facilitate the questions.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, so just raise your hands. I'll keep a list.
Okay.
Okay, so the first hand I see is Peter Morgan. Then we'll go with Jeffrey Barkdale. Jeffrey, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me? Please respond. Please say something if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Garrett, that was a beautiful presentation. I just wish they recorded it right from the beginning or so. So but more to the point. I like to stay in touch with you, because if you know the ideas that I have, I bet you would be very interested to hear them. Like, for example, a special UN observance day I came up with, called International Radiation Awareness Day. To raise awareness about the negative effects of radiation that could help move us away from it. Nuclear weapons and nuclear power, that kind of thing. And also I even put in the chat as saying people should be looking at Japan for examples of what could happen if we direct a majority of our money away from the defense budget. You know about that. You know about how Japan looks, right? Because I even had a solution for a no-fly zone, for how we can put a no-fly zone in place without Russia, and Russia can't respond with a declaration of war. It'd be impossible. I proposed for the creation of a United Nations Armed Forces, and with the United Nations Air Force. I said nations, not states. Air Force. They be enforcing the no-fly zone, not the United States. And Russia can't declare war on the United Nations, because that's like declaring war on the entire world, since every member is a state.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Do you have a question?
I kind of do. So even if we fail to meet them, you said before that we can it might not be possible to meet the mark in 5 years or so. First off, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. We obviously have the ability as far as technology, as far as the ability to work across international boundaries and connect with folks, and we have the power to do it. It's the political will is what we're lacking in challenging the corporations and greed, challenging capitalism and the structures that we have, our economic structures right now that is built around an oil market and consumption of oil. That's the immense challenge. And we see a massive decline in most activism and movement spaces. We're just in a very difficult situation. So we've been able to. How quickly did the United States build the interstate system across the country? We have the ability to do it. It's just if we can convince folks and build the political will to do it before crisis happens, before it's too late. I feel like people get motivated after tragedy, and when they are actually impacted, that's when they start making changes. And by that time, it's too late. It is too late, right? So I have a 7-year-old child, and if we get to that point, it will be too late for my child. I will not have a future for them that is anything close to the existence I have lived thus far on this planet. So, I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I just want people to be motivated. And it's very hard to do, especially because we're very often speaking to the choir. And a lot of other people are keeping their head down. They need to go to work, they need to come home. And the moments that they have to work and to organize is usually spent trying to find some happiness with their loved ones. And the level of suicide right now is tragically high all across the planet. The amount of Gen X or millennials, Gen Z that are not going to have children, have decided not to have children, is very high. We're in a real state, I think, as humans on this planet, and we need to shake it off and actually do something about it.
Is that it?
Yeah, Alice Slater.
Okay. Okay, I'm unmuted. We have something we can do. I put it in the chat. It's up on the Code Pink website. It's a very brief call for a global ceasefire and moratorium on any new weapons production. Not one more bullet, including and especially nuclear weapons. Let them rust in peace. Freeze all weapons manufacturing and fossil, nuclear, and biomass fuels. Just the way we did during World War II. We shut down every factory, every car factory, refrigerator, we turned it all over to tanks and guns. We have to shut down every tank and gun factory and turn it over to solar panels and windmills and green hydrogen. And we have to stop the climate collapse that Garrett is worried about for his child. I mean, we're really facing this, let alone, the increasing danger of nuclear war. And then also like have a 3-year global crash program. This is like, we really have to have a call where we're not just saying how the military pollutes, because it does, but also how all this wasted money and brain power is going to weapons and war instead of going to sustainable energy and cleaning up the planet and, sustainable farming and planting millions of trees and putting rooftop gardens on every building and city vegetable plots in every city. I mean, there's a lot we can do, but we need, as Garrett said, we need the political will. And I think that we have to change the conversation. It's not just we want peace or we don't want war. Of course, that's that. But the energy right now is on the climate.
Alice, do you
That's
have a question for Garrett?
My question is, how do we all get behind something? I mean, do you think it's a good idea? And how do we change this conversation so that we can gather bigger groups and really create that political will that we need to make this happen? It's not impossible. It's just improbable right now. That's my question.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you, Alice. Always thoughtful, and that petition is great. I think collaborating with coalitions and building something together, a lot of times we work in these silos. We started the War Industry Resistors Network, and we've been out all week doing protests locally on military production sites, financial sites, research and academic sites. And there's 30 plus named organizations that are part of that coalition. So I think we have to band together. I think it has to be more than just anti-war groups and peace groups. It has to be climate groups. It has to be, healthcare advocates. It has to be, Black Lives Matter. It has to be land back and indigenous voices. We need a larger tent because all these problems are just so interconnected. that I think that's the way we do it. And right now we're all working in our little silos. If it's not just organizational silos, it's issue-based silos. And corporations already work globally. You know, they don't even care about national borders. We're so xenophobic about our neighbors, you know, and our other nonprofit organizations and activists. So, you know, let's join hands and work together and build bigger projects. It's very difficult to, I think, constantly mobilize in Washington, D.C. You know, we need to build these local movements, and you know, it sounds like y'all in Wisconsin are doing the right thing. So maybe you'll build a model out there, and we could all follow. And yeah, I think also we gotta incorporate more youth. You know, we see more and more of you know, gray hairs out in the street, and you know, I'm starting to actually, you know, I'm kind of seen as one of the younger people in the movement, but there's spaces where I'm the oldest person in the room, you know, and we need to get more youth out there. Everything we need, everything we do has to have a filter on it. How do we retain and attract young activists? And every decision that we make in our meetings, every decision that we make on the street, we have to ask ourselves, is this attracting and retaining young activists? Because we need to pass our wisdom and pass that legacy on to the next generation. And if they don't feel like they have an avenue to connect, and they can't get past gatekeepers, or they're turned off by something we're doing, we need to change that, because we need to figure out a way to incorporate them and incorporate their voices, because they're going to help us make that change.
Next question would be from Larry Johnson. I'll unmute you.
Okay. Yeah, Garrett, I'm going to try to pull a question out of two things that you said early on. You said if we could get all the environmentalists to understand, you know, all the devastation that military operations do to the environment, they'd all be anti-war activists. And then you did talk about greenwashing a little bit later, but do we have any good connections or experience? I've known some of the Minnesota environmental leaders for many years, and I've asked some of them in the past, you know, talked with them about this, the kind of thing you're talking about. And you know, the immediate thing is that don't talk about that. The military is doing a lot of stuff with, you know, using bio, you know, fuels and all of that. And I don't know, do we have any good experience with getting past that?
I don't think we do. You know, a lot of this, I think we're trying to recreate and build right now. You know, the climate crisis group are, you know, networking with big, you know, climate organizations, Extinction Rebellion, Sunrise Movement, you know, 350, folks like that. So, you know, those connections are being made. And if anybody out here on this call has connections, you know, please talk to us so we can build those stronger. Because we would love to do that. The greenwashing stuff. Yeah, I mean, you know, I know Obama's presidency tried to use some of the money in the military budget to, you know, advance green things, because the budget is just enormous, and that's where our resources were. But it's also just, you know, it's just trying to make the military look like it's turned a new leaf, so to speak. And it really isn't. It really isn't helping anybody. Just being able to project militarism and have people feel better about it is not helping the planet. So I hear you.
Thank you, Larry. The next hand raised is Jim in Milwaukee.
Okay, first of all, Garrett, I just wanted to let you know that the presentation was really fantastic. Absolutely great. So a couple of points, questions I had for you. First of all, Biden's reaction to higher oil prices. As we stop buying oil, As the world stopped buying oil and gas from Russia, the price of fossil fuels went up. Biden's reaction as well, we have to find some other way to increase the supply instead of using this as an opportunity to address climate change and to make us all recognize we need to make some sacrifices if we're going to address climate change. He makes us feel like no sacrifices are needed and let's just increase the supply of fossil fuels. So that number one is your reaction to Biden's handling of this. And number two, do you think there can be a movement to abolish war as a social institution? I know World Beyond War focuses on that. I think like we abolish slavery, we can't abolish war. What's your personal feeling about a movement to abolish war? So those are the two questions.
Jim, I agree with you on both points. We celebrate the Kellogg Briand Day each year. It's policy. It's a signed document saying that we're not supposed to use war as national policy to solve our problems. And I would like to build a bigger movement out of that. I think that people usually get stuck on like small little practical victories and goals that they can see as like little achievable things that they can accomplish. But if it's built in a long campaign, knowing that that's the end result, I think we can do that. And I also agree with you about the fossil fuel decisions from the administration. This is a great opportunity to make the transition, and we're wasting it. Why? Obviously, there's connections there behind the scenes between Biden's presidency, and most of the congressional seats are interconnected with fossil fuel corporations and industry. So they have an invested interest in not making that transition happen, despite the fact that our climate crisis is coming. For some reason that seems to be unpenetrable to most of these leaders, and they don't seem to care, or they think they're going to have the resources to deal with it, and fuck everybody else. I don't know what their opinion is, but it's amazing how they continue to skirt actually finding solutions for this and using great opportunities to make the transition. They don't do it.
Thanks, Jim. The next question comes from someone who's calling in from a phone with the last four, 8727. And you're unmuted.
Hi. Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So my name is Nancy. I'm out in rural upstate New York in a very conservative area. I've been involved in environmental activism for decades, and I'm currently a member of Pachamama Alliance and have been involved in Paul Hawkins' work and effort to draw down carbon. He's got a new book out called Regeneration. And two questions. I'm also a member of Braver Angels, and I'm wondering if you are aware of that organization and the work they're doing to bridge the divide, the political divides, the divides in our society that keep us from being able to even, communicate with family members when it comes to political differences. Really important work, because we're not going to be able to solve or make headway unless we can dialogue with people who are holding the belief that climate change is natural and or it doesn't exist, and et cetera, et cetera. And if you aren't aware of them, I would strongly encourage you to connect with them. They're doing awesome work. And there's also the school of thought of collapsology, that we're already past that point of no return, with feedback loops that we've already set up. And, that the only way that we're going to be able to deal with this is through being able to speak to one another, establish relationships of mutual support and compassion. So I guess, this is a huge topic, and with the silos would have been better off connecting, a couple decades ago to make a real difference. I'm just seeing the impact of our weapons, arms sales as being, so instrumental in perpetuating war, because there's so many people, retirement accounts that depend on dividends from their investments in, defense industries, which is the biggest, industry besides, the pharmaceutical industry or healthcare in this country. I just said a lot, but yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to connect you, or it's easy enough to get on the Braver Angels site or the Pachamama website. They're global, and we've been doing this work, and we're well aware of, all the inputs and effects that the defense system has on environment and climate. But yeah, I mean, you can look it up yourself. I'd be happy to connect. But I'm just not terribly enthused about the possibility of us being able to really turn things around at this point. At best, we can find a way to face this collapse together without like murdering each other.
Yeah, I'm on the website right now, braverangels.org. It looks like an interesting thing. One of the slides that it's sometimes in these presentations is talking about how the United States is not a failed state, moving towards a failed state, but the conflict that we have, the polarization that we have, the justification of the moralization of violence, whether it's politically or racially motivated, is really eroding this country. And should this be a nation in this crisis? Should we be a nuclear power? Should we be a world leader? All these are legitimate questions. I think that we're as we moralize racial and political violence in this country, that we spiral into the potential of having another civil conflict in this nation. And I'm afraid that where oftentimes our anti-war, anti-militarism work is focused on stopping the perpetration of violence overseas in a foreign nation, soon our activists will have to focus here at home from stopping Americans from killing each other. And we should already, we already see like the racial injustice that's occurring and the inequality, the lack of equitability. So, where are we as a peace movement to address these things? Braver Angels seems like a pretty good angle. So thanks for sharing that with me.
Thank you. I see three more hands raised right now. The next one has the name Irene Miller on the screen. And you're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Yes. You're talking about getting youth involved. My question is, are we aware of stuff that DARPA is involved in yet? It's been so much secrecy about the things they're doing. And the youth today are interested in technology and robots and things like that. And DARPA is very involved. Is there a way that we could kind of like get the tools of DARPA, get their brains and look towards the future, like, hey, new technology for energy, new technology like electric vehicles. We got new cars coming up with the batteries. They have very expensive materials in them, and then there's also these blood mines, to mine these things, and they also pollute and create a lot of environmental damage. And so to get the youth involved, maybe getting something like a DARPA type organization, or find some youth that would like to head up something like that for new technology, new thoughts, get rid of this old gray matter things and get some new youth and get their matter in?
I like the way you're thinking. Obviously, young people are always creating new solutions. We have a program called Gamers for Peace, where we have a lot of younger folks that stream on Twitch, put over 20 hours of original content a week out, in combination of both digital and tabletop gaming and other adjacent hobby spaces. But that was started mostly because of truth in recruiting campaigns trying to stop predatorial military recruiting in online spaces. But the U.S. military is moving in a more technological direction. If you look at where drone warfare is accelerating into, soon we're going to be looking at AI warfare, where it's fire and forget AI systems in war zones that can repair themselves and repair each other and keep battling. So I mean, the future of warfare is in cloud technology and AI. So if we're not including folks like Google and Amazon and Microsoft in the axis of evil of military industrial complexes, we're fooling ourselves, right? Because the AI, the drone is just one of many firing systems of the future that's all going to be grounded in AI and cloud technology. And a new term that I heard recently within the last few months is the kill cloud, is how we're using data to inform and become militarized. So any kind of form of technology that we create is going to have military applications, and it's pretty scary. So we need the youth because they're going to be the problem solvers. They know this world. It's almost intuitive to them, where I still struggle to send text messages.
All right, thank you. The next question from Janet in Portland.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm in the Climate Crisis and Militarism Project, and I do have a question for Garrett that I think will be of common interest, but I did want to just respond quickly to the really important issue that Larry Johnson brought up, and thank you so much for doing that kind of outreach to people in the environmental movement about the issue of military greenhouse gas emissions and other climate impacts. And what I would say is that we cannot just look at the tailpipes. We think of burning fuel and then the carbon dioxide and other emissions come out at the other end. But there's a very heavy carbon footprint of the manufacture of all of these things. On another webinar, I heard the description of US war jets as containing a periodic table worth of minerals and metals. The mining for that has immense impacts. But I think one way might be to just ask people that in environmental and climate groups to take a look at our website or find out what they're interested in and sort of tackle it that way. The US military, as Garrett has already explained, but just to reinforce this, can never be anywhere close to net zero or carbon neutral or any of that. It just makes my blood boil. But anyway, thank you, Larry. You're at the beginning of some really important conversations. And we know that, when you start talking to somebody and they don't agree with you right away, that just gives more material than to develop it if you can. So my question for Garrett is, what's the number of US troops now positioned in Eastern Europe? And I'm also wondering if you could say a bit more about that Arctic littoral strike war exercise in Norway, because that seems to me to be a kind of prefiguring of a possible US/NATO invasion in the Baltic or something like that. So anything you can say about that. My nephew right now, he's a major in the Marine Reserves, and he's in Camp Pendleton right now. doing training. So I'm particularly concerned about what the Marines might be gearing up to do.
Yeah. Well, as far as troop movements, Janet, I mean, first off, thanks for coming. And I hope you're not going to tell on me about ruining all your powerful slideshows. I don't know how many troops are there. You know, I think we've seen reports of like 5,000 going here, 5,000 going here. And it's hard to tell if it's the same 5,000 that's being re-reported in something else. You know, there's a lot of troops that were already there. And I don't know how many that would consist of. You know, I was stationed in Vilseck, Germany when I was a cavalry scout in 1st Infantry Division. So there's so many bases just like mine all over Europe that I don't know how many already existed there and how many new troops have gone. But and I'm blanking about the second part of your question. You asked about shoot, you'll have to type it in. I think they muted you. I have something for it. My medicated mind is on NyQuil right now. Oh yeah, littoral strike teams. So I don't know if y'all have heard this. The fourth generation or fourth phase warfare is kind of like an integrated systems between like cyber warfare, information warfare, maintaining the moral high ground, comms and communications. It's all trying to be integrated now. You have to win on the political battlefield just as much as you do on the physical battlefield. And we're actually starting to prepare small units, specifically around littoral strike units in the Marine Corps, where there's actually a hacker that goes along with the unit that's being deployed in the sand, on the beaches, in the forests, that can directly connect to satellites and on the ground in real time hack and disable things and find information. And it's really quite extraordinary. And we can only do that with the conjunction of Space Force and satellite technology, cloud technology. So these, if you look up the new littoral marine units, it's very surprising. They're small, very, very small units that can move as much as possible undetected with small footprints, and be able to go in and out and do an immense amount of destruction, carrying as much firepower as individual service members could carry, like solo by themselves. So I imagine this is what's going on in Norway right now, especially with the interest of more Scandinavian countries moving over to NATO, and threats that are beginning to emerge from Russia. So yeah, it's really bizarre. But also check out fourth phase or fourth generation warfare, because I think that's revealing of what the future warfare is going to kind of look like here.
Thank you, Janet. I see one more hand raised, and that's Nina. And I'll unmute you just a second. Okay.
Hello, thank you. I am going to say that I'm not a veteran, but I've been following this group for a while because I like what you're doing and how you think. But my question is, what percentage of veterans do you think are thinking in the same ways that you are, and how easy is it to win veterans over to this way of thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I want to say that we live in a war culture, and that every person on this call might as well be a military veteran, because most of us are U.S. citizens, and we are part of this system, and the institutions that we have perpetuate war. So we have associate members that are not veterans, and we work alongside them, and there's some of the foundations of many of our chapters and our national projects. So you can become a member of Veterans for Peace even if you're not a military veteran. The second part is, how many veterans are like me? I think the bulk of veterans, I think, are somewhere in the middle, trying to come home, get their head screwed on straight, get a career, get through school, start a family, trying to forget about things, because the reality is that we were betrayed by our nation and by our systems is so awful that it sends you into a dark place. And it's no wonder why 22 veterans kill themselves a day in this country, because that reality is very stark, that you were used for something so awful that creates such an intense amount of harm all over the planet, and in our own communities, when we're being told that we're defending democracy or defending our neighborhoods or our communities, and the reality is we're actually hurting them, making them less safe, and inflicting pain upon our own countrymen, our own people. It's hard to grasp, so people want to avoid that. And my first boss in the United States, I worked for Vet Voice Foundation, or Veterans for America. And my boss was Bobby Moeller. They call him the East Coast Ron Kolvik, because he was shot through the spine and paralyzed in Vietnam, and was an activist, for the rest of his life. He won a Nobel Peace Prize for building the international campaign to ban landmines. And I was present during an interview he had, and the guy asked him, "Hey, well, it's probably easy for you to be against the war. Look what it did to you." And I've never seen him so mad. And basically his message was, it's harder for me. Don't you think, because I can never walk again, that I want to find some noble cause for what I did, some honorable existence for the sacrifices that I made and the people that I killed. And it always kind of struck me, and that stuck with me. I used to visit Walter Reed when I worked in Washington, D.C. all the time, and Bethesda Naval Hospital, and visit service members that were wounded. It's not a veteran hospital, it's active duty military that are wounded there, and visit them. And I always had it in my mind that I'd talk to them about politics and about the war and the causes, and I never could. I could never do it, not with a single one. I must have visited over 100 soldiers in those hospitals, and I could never bring it up, because I could never look them in the eye and tell them that they're laying in this bed for fucking bullshit. So I think most veterans are not radicalized. They are just people trying to get along. I think some people wake up and become radicalized and see the pathway towards redemption, and join me and my mentors and the people that are behind me. And then there are many that are being radicalized in the other direction, because you have an immense mass of disenfranchisement, and you're being sold this American myth about what patriotism is and about what nationalism is. And you feel that that's unfulfilled through your military service, and you come home and people like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and these people snatch them up, and they become part of hate groups and find camaraderie there, because we've lied to them. It's not because they've been conditioned through the military. They've been conditioned because of our society before they even entered the military. That's what drove them into military service. And when they're coming out, instead of wanting to feel like they've been betrayed and they need to fight back against the systems, they feel betrayed by their society, and they lean in even more into that patriotic myth. So, but I think most of us are somewhere in the middle.
Thank you, Nina. That's the last hand raised for someone that hadn't had a chance to speak. I'll turn it over to Mark here.
Well, I can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I thought this has been a really great session. I've seen people tonight that I have not seen before, and heard from people that I haven't heard from before. Thank you very much, Garrett. You put together a really nice, what do you call it, bullet, or whatever you call it that you put together.
I got to tell you, most of that was the climate crisis and militarism project, and hard workers like Janet and them that really allowed me to just steal those slideshows. So
okay.
the presentation is theirs, and they did an incredible job, and it's very useful.
Yeah, but I one of the things that I would like to express is that what you said in the very beginning about coalition building, I think that is the key to a nonviolent revolution in the future. I think if we don't learn to come together and sit down at the table together and figure this out together, we don't have a chance. They're gonna, you know, we're all gonna be fighting in the streets. So coalition building, and we're doing that here in Milwaukee. We've got an End the Wars coalition that's made up of both peace and justice organizations here in the city of Milwaukee. So when we have an event, we let all of the coalition members know about it, and they will come to the event. And then when we have a beef with one of our congressional representatives, we call on the whole coalition to go to their office, not just one or two people. And so coalition building. Anyway, I think unless somebody else can think of something else, I think this has been a good evening. And we could just say good night and good luck.
Thanks, everybody. It's an honor. Hope to see you in the street soon.
Tomorrow.
Thanks, Garrett.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. And
Yeah, go ahead and end.